Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN member Kyle Mast, founder of Clarity Financial, a financial planning firm based just outside Portland, Oregon, on the show today. Kyle has a very cool background growing up on a Christmas tree farm owned by his dad and his grandfather and uncle, and was pretty much bred to be a business owner. Kyle ultimately launched his own firm in 2014 after working at another firm for a few years. He was able to build a small book of clients when he was at that firm, which he then purchased before launching, which did give him a little initial revenue when he actually launched his firm. 4 years in, he just hit the 100 client household mark and has decided to slow down and really enjoy life and family. Kyle actually attended our Accelerate conference last month, which was focused on hiring your first employee. And his takeaway was he didn't want to hire anyone. He has a 1-year-old son, and the desire to spend more time with him has led Kyle to back off to working 3 days a week in the office. He's also approaching financial independence, which he hopes to achieve in 2 years, which will give him the flexibility to put his extra income that he makes from his firm to use helping in the community. If building a practice that supports other goals that you have, and that's the vision that you have for why you want to start and run your own firm, then this episode is for you. Did you know that 72% of callers who reach an automated answer will hang up without leaving a message and often call another advisor? A missed call can cost you a new client or chance to grow wallet share with existing ones. That's why finance professionals rely on Ruby's live receptionist to answer calls, transfer only the calls they want, take messages, collect new client intake, make follow-up calls, and more, allowing them to accomplish more and grow. Let Ruby help you increase productivity and give outstanding client service with every call. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN, or better yet, call them at 844-853-7829. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at XYPlanningNetwork.com/151. Also, be sure to go to XYPlanningNetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's XYPlanningNetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Kyle. Hey, Kyle, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me.
So we met, we got to know each other at the Accelerate conference, actually, last month, which was fantastic, which I want to talk more about. But Taylor had sent me over some things about your firm that I didn't know, and I'm really excited to explore because you are most definitely in what we call lifestyle business camp. I don't love that term. We need a new term for it because it makes you sound lazy, which you're clearly not. But you're clearly on that side of it, and I'm super excited to explore that because I think a lot of advisors out there are going to be very envious of sort of where you're at once we get into it. So just to give listeners an overview, could you just sort of lay the landscape on sort of your firm, number of clients, where you're located, typical type of client you work with, and then we'll dig into the details.
Yeah, for sure. I'm in just south of Portland, Oregon. I kind of grew up in the area. I have exactly 100 households that I'm working with right now. I just landed on a number about a month ago. Nice round number. And I would say most of my clients, I don't have the niche, that you always talk about, but most of them originally came from kind of the same geographic area here where I grew up, but I've kind of branched out. I have some up into Seattle and Arizona, I think about 5 or 6 different states now, both from moving away and referrals. We can go into the history a little bit more if you'd like me to do that too, of how I got to here. But this will be 9 years in the industry this June, 4 years owning my own RIA, 6 years owning my own firm, I guess. There's a couple of transitions in there. I would say probably about a year and a half ago, I really got to a comfortable place as far as the income I was making, the clients that I had. I have probably, and a lot of advisors say this, the best group of clients. They're just wonderful. I mean, I feel super blessed to have the group that I get to work with feel very like they value my advice and just really appreciate what I do. And I learn probably more from them than they learn from me. The demographics of my clients, I have I think my youngest client is 21 and my oldest client, I think he is 95 now. So I have pretty much a nice.
All right. You got the range.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just kind of a quick overview.
Yeah, we'll dig into all those details. So I suspect based on 9 years in the industry, we're the same age, which means next year is when we have to say we've been professionals for 10 years. And something about that just makes me feel old. Yes. Because, for a while we were the young guns that, in our 20s rocking out in the industry. And now all of a sudden we're going to turn into the old guys, which is sad, but it's good. There will be a new crop of young people. Yeah. So we have 2.5 decades until we hit the median age of financial advisors, though. So that's fine.
Yes, no kidding. Hopefully we bring it down before then.
So talk to me a little bit about your career path. So you said you've been in the industry 9 years, had a book of business for, I think you said 6, and then owned your RIA for 4. So just talk me through sort of that initial sort of entry into financial services, because this is sort of the industry you grew up in, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I graduated college in 2007. So I'm 33. And in 2007, I took a job for about a year at the old high school that I went to as a private school. And that makes it sound like it's something really yuppity, but it's definitely not. Very rural private school with not much money. So I was the director of donor and alumni relations for about 8 months and totally hated my job. So I'd rather help people with money than ask them for their money was kind of what I realized through that transition. And that was the only other kind of real job that I had before jumping into the financial industry. So I kind of did that through mid 2007 into 2008. 2008, I was thinking about starting my own firm at that point, had done just a little bit of research, didn't really know much, and decided to get lunch with my dad's financial advisor because I knew he had started his own firm. And by the end of lunch, he actually offered me a job. He was,
wow.
Yeah. He was looking for a succession plan. He was looking for someone to bring in and slowly move the firm off to, at that point, he would have been just over 60 years old, I believe. So that was what his thought was with me. And I found out later that he had found that I interned in college at a financial services firm in Virginia. And he had written my name down. My dad became a client of mine when I joined his firm the next year. And I found a note that had my name on it. Kyle, intern, possibility. It was really, really neat to find it in the note files. So what happened in summer 2008, he offered me the job, but it wasn't until mid 2009 that the start date was set because I had already committed to helping out on my family Christmas tree farm. That's what I grew up on in south of Portland here in Oregon. And they have retail lots or had retail lots in Arizona. And every Christmas, my uncle and grandfather would go down there, and I decided to go help them because I didn't have anything else lined up at that point. So that fall and winter, I went down to run Christmas tree and pumpkin lots in Arizona instead of endure the rain up in Oregon. And then coming into 2009, my starting salary was supposed to be $48,000. And you know what happened at the end of 2008 and beginning of 2009? I met with the firm owner, and he said that he wouldn't be able to pay me that, and my starting salary was cut in half. So to $24,000. Yeah. And it was definitely just a business decision on his part. He actually ended up having to lay off one of his assistants soon after I came on. I'm very grateful that I still got the opportunity to join his firm actually in that environment. So I joined his firm there, and I ended up taking part of the small book of clients, like a lot of advisors do when they join a firm. And then around the beginning of the end of 2011, there was another advisor at that firm that decided he wanted to buy his book of business. And then I decided that it would be a good time for me to try to buy the book that I was servicing as well, because it was basically worthless. I mean, just a very small group of clients that would be really hard for the owner to sell otherwise. And I approached him about this, and the succession plan that was supposed to happen was just kind of not happening, or it wasn't moving along. And I was realizing more that I really desired to own my own firm. So I ended up purchasing my book of business in 2012 on a kind of an earn-out basis, but still staying under the same practice or ensemble practice. It was a hybrid practice at that point. So the three of us advisors shared office technology, but owned our own books of business. And in 2014, I launched my own RIA and ended up trading back some of the commission clients that I had purchased from the original owner to pay off that original book. So 2014, when I started my RIA, I was free and clear with a small book of clients, but it gave me some money to live off of, which was kind of nice. I wasn't going cold turkey at that point.
So based on your story, it sounds like many of us, we call it the failed succession plan, not to be rude necessarily to the advisor that had the succession or that may have made a commitment there. But it does sound like you had a pretty interesting opportunity because, it sounds like you got some clients and then you were able to basically buy those clients and then sell back, like pretty creative way of essentially, 4 years ago being able to launch a firm and actually have some clients in place, which is really cool.
Yeah, I definitely really appreciate the opportunity he gave me to start at the firm and then even to be able to buy part of the firm. The fact that I was able to approach him and say, this isn't quite working out how the succession plan is going. I'd really like to own my own firm. Would you do this? And he was all about it. I mean, he really saw that was something that I wanted to do. And, he was really investing in me and he trained me a lot. He was part of the experience that I had going towards my CFP. So yeah, and from his standpoint too, it was a benefit to him because this is probably a book of clients that he probably wouldn't have been able to sell otherwise because of the small nature of it. It'd be really hard to do that. So we both benefited a lot from that. And we still do. I was telling you before the call that we actually share an office space still. Me and him and another advisor, we share 2 office spaces actually that we all work from home in our home offices and rent office space that we have a shared schedule that we book clients at. And it still works really well. We still meet every few months or so to chat about different things. So it's a good
That's really
relationship. Cool. Yeah, it's a lot better than a lot of stories I've heard, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Do you mind if I ask, what do you pay for office space? So to have a shared office space with 3 people, what does that do to your bottom line?
Oh man. So I have scored in this arena. So I only pay for 2 days per month in the current office that I'm sitting in right now. And then I only pay for 1 day per month in another office further south in Oregon. And the rest I do in-home meetings or virtual meetings with clients. And that only costs me $200 a month. So I have a really low overhead.
That's awesome.
When it comes to, the main advisor from the original firm, he uses the office the most. The other advisor uses about the same amount that I do. And I think his arrangement is similar. He's still under the hybrid firm with the original firm owner owning his own book of business. But yeah, that's something that I've been able to really peel back and invest in the business without having to have a whole lot of overhead for office space. And it's still nice office space to meet with a client when I need to.
So why have 2 office spaces? Is it just to get 2 listings on advisor search portals, or is it to be closer to your clients? What's the rationale for having 2 different spaces that you meet from?
Yeah, closer to clients. So I have kind of a Portland, Oregon set of clients and then an Albany, Eugene, kind of near the University of Oregon, that area. It's probably about an hour and a half south where I have a good group of clients that I meet with. So having the 2 separate areas, I kind of bunch them together different times of the month.
That's awesome. I know, some advisors will do that just as a way of getting more listings and, showing up in more local search, but it can be a bit of a burden when you're having to go there all the time for prospect meetings. That's the one I found when I had 2 office locations. Now mine were halfway across the country from each other, but it was like I could bunch client meetings, but I struggled to bunch prospective client meetings because no prospective client wants to hear oh yeah, I can meet with you on this one day at this one time in 2 months. You want to go down there and meet with them immediately, it sounds like you're sort of through that side of the process since you're at that 100 client mark. But it's awesome that it puts you closer to clients and more convenient for them.
Yes. Earlier on, I should say, when I was in more prospecting mode, I did have more days per month that I was in both offices so that I could be more flexible with that. That's a really good point.
So talk to me about the launching process of your firm. So sort of how many clients and sort of what was your revenue that you were able to bring over with you? Did you have a pretty good starting base or was it pretty low given the clients that you were working with?
Yes, it was low. Let me look at my income statements here. I had to pull them up to remind me how terrible it was earlier on.
For anybody starting a firm, that is a statement you will hear from everyone.
Yeah. I mean, as we go into this, I really hope people realize, early on, you just don't make any money. Well, some people do and are rock stars. And I am not one of those. I'm not someone who brings on a whole bunch of clients and makes a lot of money. I'm kind of the slow turtle. So yeah, early on, 2013, my total revenue was $38,000. 2014 was $46,000. So it was slowly building there. 2015 $83,000, 2016, and it continued to go up from there. But those first years, I think the first 3 years I paid myself, I made like $15,000, $17,000, and $19,000, 2012, 2013, and 2014, while I was paying back for the book that I had bought and still trying to build and buy technology and grow the firm that I was, and prospecting at the same time. So those first 3 years were super lean. And so one thing that I did in those first 3 years is I continued to spend November and December in Arizona working with the family Christmas tree farm to earn a little bit more money, because most people don't want to meet right around the holidays. So I was able to go down there.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And be able to email back and forth and call with clients, but just say I wasn't doing any meetings during the holidays. And then I'd come back and really hit it hard in January. The other thing too is I was wrapping up my CFP in the middle of 2013. So my revenue for that year kind of hurt, because I could see that I wasn't out prospecting. I was spending more time studying and knocking that out.
Yeah, and I would say 38,000 your first year, for anyone who's trying to get a handle on projections, like that's a pretty solid first year. So we don't see folks coming out of the gate making 100K in their first year for two reasons. I mean, one, many of us started with a limited number of clients, if any at all. So you don't have a big base to start from. I mean, even if you have 100 clients today, even if you were signing up 25 clients a year, that means that, 12 of those clients came in the second half of the year and 6 of those came in the last quarter. So you're building all this future revenue because they're paying you ongoing, but all that revenue doesn't come in year one. So for folks that are building out projections, you can't say I'm going to have, I'm going to close the year with 20 clients times they pay me $1,500 a year. So there we go. It's like, no. You had 2 that paid you for 12 months, 2 paid you for 11, 2 paid you for 10. And on down, which compresses the math quite a bit. So, but yeah, 40,000 your first year is awesome. But there was a big jump going into 2016, sort of, there was slow growth into 2015, big jump into 2016. What do you attribute sort of that? It sounded like your income went up like 40 or 50%, or no, more than that. Sorry.
Yeah. So a couple things. It was probably about the 3-year mark is when you really kind of start getting referrals, from what I've heard from other people. And that definitely was kind of the case for me. Referrals started rolling in pretty good. So I was starting to be able to be a little bit more selective on clients that I wanted to have really long term. That was one thing that the original firm owner that I worked with, he was just an amazing guy. He gave me some great advice. One was always focus on recurring revenue ahead of anything else. And then also be really diligent, even in the early years when you don't make much, to only take on people that you're going to enjoy working with for 40 years. And that has just played out really well to the point where I'm at right now. So in that year, I was able to kind of start doing that a little bit more. But the main thing is I raised my fees. I was not charging enough in that year. And when I launched my RIA in 2014, the regulator in Oregon said my fees were too low.
Now that is not something I've heard a regulator say before.
He told me my fees were too low, and I, being idealistic and young, said, I think our industry charges too much. I think, fees are going to be compressed. And he said, you're going to end up raising them soon. And about a year and a half later, I did.
What were you charging at the time?
I'm trying to remember. I had a very heavily graduated fee schedule. So the front end, the first 100,000 was about 1%, but then it dropped dramatically for like the next 250 and the next 500. So much so, like from 1% to 0.5%. I can't remember the actual numbers off the top of my head, but it was pretty dramatic for the amount of work that I would be doing for the clients. And at that point, I was pretty much AUM. I was just launching the retainer portion of the business at the beginning of 2014. And those AUM fees were what I raised later on, as well as retainer fees in 2015 that gave me more of that bump.
Yeah, and that's what's tough is even 1% of $100,000. I mean, it's $1,000 a year, and it's money for sure. But it's tough if you don't have a minimum fee in there. And one of the big reasons we advocate for having that retainer fee structure in there is just so that you're making a minimum amount of money when you are working with a client. But yeah, that is, I have never heard a regulator say that. I have certainly heard the opposite, because there's a lot of confusion if you charge a client $200 a month and they only have, 25,000 in IRA. Sometimes the regulators do the math. They're like, you're charging 6%.
Definitely.
It's like, no, we're not actually. So, makes my job fun to go meet with them. Yeah. So you raised your fees. 100% of XYPN members last year in our benchmarking survey reported having raised fees in their first 3 years. And, as much as we say, raise your fees, there's just a lack of confidence when you're first starting and, maybe lack of awareness of what it actually costs. And, you want to get compensated for your hard work. And once you really get into it and you own the firm, you realize just how hard you're
Definitely.
working.
And that original fee structure, I should say I was including financial planning with the assets under management. Now I have them separated out to where I charge a minimum financial planning retainer fee plus assets under management. And now I think my assets under management starts at 0.65%. It's still fairly low, but I do mostly passive index portfolios for clients. But I have that higher baseline now. And that's something that I think I just needed to learn that. The regulator saw it coming. He had seen enough firms that he knew that it just wouldn't work out.
Yeah. And quite honestly, I think the regulator wants to be sure you're around long term to take care of your clients. They don't want you going bankrupt, which is why several states at least do require that you put money in the bank. I know Tennessee requires $15,000 in an account that you can't touch. And I assume it is basically to be able to refund clients if you go bankrupt, which clearly not the goal. So yeah, talk to me about the rolling out then of the new fee structure. So you went from AUM only, and how has the fee structure evolved for those clients?
Yeah, so I basically have two segments of clients, and it gets kind of messy, but this is the nature of how I transitioned through the business. So I have a grandfathered fee schedule for clients, and they actually pay a little bit less. The ones that have been with me longer, theirs is actually 1.45% on the first 150,000 of AUM. And for new clients, it's 0.65% on the first 150,000 of AUM, but they also pay a $1,500 a year financial planning retainer fee. The grandfathered clients, it's built into that first AUM fee schedule structure. Same service provided to both groups of clients. The grandfather clients actually get a little bit of a break. It ends up being about a $1,200 instead of $1,500 for that financial planning piece, but it's wrapped in as that investment advisory fee. A little bit messy. I ran it by the regulator. I got a surprise audit last March. That was a lot of fun too. But the regulator, I have just had a really good experience with him here in Oregon. He's a great guy, the one that I've met with, and just kind of explained that. But on my ADV, I have the new fee schedule that current clients do moving on. So I simply sent out a letter to clients. I just said, this is what we are adjusting our fees to. Please call me if you have any questions. These are the services that are being provided. And I got absolutely zero pushback from it. It went really well.
So 1.45, how did you come up with that number instead of 1.5? Was there a rationale?
Yeah, so 0.65 was where I felt comfortable for just the assets under management and doing index portfolios for my new fee schedule. And then the extra 0.8 is actually $1,200 out of 150,000. So that's essentially like charging a $1,200 a year financial planning fee. So that's I baked it right into that original fee schedule. Instead of making those clients having them go down to a lower fee schedule, but then charging them outside of their investment accounts, something that they're not used to, having them send either ACH or credit card payments on a monthly basis. I just kept it the same. I've given the clients options as fee questions come up over time. And I've had a couple clients move to the two separate billings. Most of them just see no point to it and want to stay the way it is.
So that's interesting. So what do you think is the sort of their thought process on moving from strict AUM to retainer plus AUM, even if the dollars are the same? Like, why are they making that move, do you think?
The one of them that made the move, I think his rationale was in case he wants to end up managing the investments on his own. Our conversation was he's a little bit more of a do-it-yourselfer, and that would make it a lot easier to move those to a Vanguard, that he could do the management on his own, but still have the financial planning fee. And he just wanted to do it ahead of time. And so we just split it out that way. I can't remember what we did with the other client, but that was his reasoning.
Okay. So you just sent out a letter. I mean, how much did the fees, just on a best guess, like percentage wise, how much were the fees going up for these clients when you made that transition?
Oh, probably 25 to 30%. It was pretty substantial that they went up. And I had some conversations with clients, the ones that I reviewed with in that first quarter of that year, that had a few questions, but they waited to ask me in person. And yeah, it just went really well. I think a lot of them just value the trust, in our industry, working with someone that is doing a good job And then when I compare my fees to other fees that are out there, they're still kind of on the low end if you get above that 150,000 mark, because it again drops dramatically from there. But not that you want to compete on fees, but I think the clients really understand the value that was being provided for them.
Yeah, I would say raising fees is probably the most terrifying thing that advisors are faced with. Close second being having to repaper investment accounts just from an administrative standpoint. But, and typically I hear advisors will, let's say I'm going to raise my fees next year. And so I wait. And then as I meet with clients, I have the conversation throughout the year. So really it takes a full year or at least a full quarter to 6 month cycle to meet with everyone to raise fees. I don't think I've ever heard anyone just like sends out a letter and that's that, which I think is, one, it shows just how low your fees were. Yes. But also that confidence for you that, confident in your service and that if there were any questions that came up, one, you trust your clients to call you if they have a question, and two, that, you were providing a value that they weren't going to push back against.
Yeah, I met with another advisor before I sent it out, and he looked at my fees too and said I definitely needed to. And I actually just sent it out with my ADV update. I send a little letter to clients at the same time. It's kind of a good excuse to touch base on a different level than just their normal finances. And that's when I did it. And it went through pretty easily.
So for all the advisors out there, I've started just telling folks that if whatever fees you come up with when you go to launch your firm, raise them by 50%, and then that's your fee schedule.
Yes.
So that's just my blanket recommendation now is whatever you think 50% higher. We'll tell you if you're way overboard.
Yeah. To add to that too, I did calculations on my clients beforehand, and I could have lost the bottom half of my clients and still be making more than what I was making before with that fee raise. And I could probably have lost 20% of the average revenue of my clients, if I lost clients from different segments, and still be well above where I was. So for the service that I was providing, it's just kind of a hair salon, anything where you're becoming really good at your craft. And not to say that I'm good at my craft. I think you hit it on the head that my fees are just really low. But at some point you reach capacity. And if you want to continue to take on a new client, you need to raise your fees, which reminds me that I think this year I'm going to be raising them again. That's been probably 3 years ago now that I've raised them. I think it's about time again.
So will you be raising the AUM percentages or just the planning fee or both?
I'm kind of evaluating it now, but I'll be raising the planning fee for sure. And I think I'll be bumping that 1.45 on the first 150,000 further out, maybe on the first 200,000. And then so that'll essentially do whatever the same increase. I'll need to calculate what I decide to increase on the financial planning side of it. And then for those grandfather clients, see what that looks like. Not sure. That might be next year's ADV filing that I do that kind of same type of letter and service update.
Yeah, good time to do it since you basically have to update your ADV every year anyway. So nice if you're not doing mid-year things. So very cool. So talk to me a little bit about, I'm just curious, since your background was growing up on a farm. My wife's a farm girl, so I've seen that side of life. How do you feel like that's impacted you as an entrepreneur and as you've gone into this business ownership thing, this roller coaster that we are all on? How do you think that's played into that?
That's a really good question. It's played into it so much. I think I had no choice but to be an entrepreneur, pretty much the way I think it was bred into me kind of. My dad owned the farm with my uncle and my grandfather, and now just with my uncle currently. But he was around all the time. He worked a lot and worked hard, but I saw him, every day in the middle of the day. I remember him coming in for lunch, and then he'd be on the kitchen floor and he would lay down onto the carpet into the living room, leaving his boots on the kitchen floor, and take a 10-minute nap and then go back out and keep working. And I just loved that. I got to see my dad all the time, and we could do a lot of different things. He worked hard. He worked on Saturdays sometimes, and during harvest, he'd fall asleep during church when we were at church because he was just exhausted because he would be up till 11:30 and up at 4 a.m. in the morning, loading semi-trucks full of trees in the winter in Oregon. It's not a lot of fun. But because of being an entrepreneur, we took 4 to 5 week road trips in the summer. He was from Buffalo, New York, and we would go and see college friends of theirs across the U.S. in my grandpa's RV. We would borrow it and we'd go across country and come back. And he could leave the farm in the middle of summer because it was off season. he didn't have a boss looking over his shoulder saying, this is what your schedule is. I think I didn't give it enough credit when I was moving into the workforce that was going to impact what I really wanted. But I learned pretty quick that was a kind of lifestyle, at least the flexibility. I want to be able to work hard, but also be able to play hard and also be able to spend a lot of time with my family. I have a 1-year-old son now. It definitely impacted what I tried to build in the firm, not from a revenue standpoint, but from I guess maybe hourly wage or value per hour standpoint. My goal is to build more value for my hours, both in the business, in other things that I do, real estate investing, and in the value that the time that I spend with my family or friends. That's more of a goal for me than increasing revenue.
So you mentioned your son. So I noticed that you do have a blog where sort of the theme of it is writing letters to your son. So can you talk about sort of where that came from, that idea and passion for that?
Yeah, it's just kind of a random, everyone says, oh, you got to write a blog. To be credible, you got to write a blog. And I feel like I've tried to write it, and there's nothing that, if I'm not excited about it or enjoy it, I'm not going to do it. And everything always fizzles out. But I'd always wanted to write little letters to my son, Randon is his name, and just thoughts about life, things that I wish I would have done earlier or better or that I've learned. So I just started writing these letters to Randon, and I'd just say, Randon, here is a topic, everything from financial independence, early financial independence to life skills, the power of humility, recognizing that you really don't achieve anything on your own. We're all standing on the shoulders of others. I'm trying to think of other letters and topics I've written, but it's just been a fun little side thing. I'll probably write 1 or 2 letters a month and stick them on there. And my clients enjoy reading them. And it's just something that they can pass on to, their grandkids or their kids if they're trying to move them towards being a little bit better with money or just some life skills in general. But mostly it's just kind of a fun thing for me to do for myself and for my son.
Do you have plans? Is that going to become a book or something like that? Or you're just really enjoying having these letters that, he'll get to read one day?
Oh, that's funny you would mention that. Originally, I had thought that might be a goal. I guess is still there, but I haven't formalized what that would look like. I don't know what kind of book I would write with a bunch of letters that I've written to my son. But yeah, I think that would definitely be a fun thing that I could do at some point. But if anything else, it's just kind of a repository. I've also thought too, if something were to ever happen to me, he's 1 year old, how would he ever know what his dad was like? This is a little glimpse into what I would have for him as I would try to raise him as he grows. He would at least get to see some of that.
That's amazing. And, heaven forbid, the worst case scenario, that would be a gift to him that, to be able to grow up at least knowing you and knowing who you are, even without, a lot of memories. So that's fantastic. So another thing that I know you're sort of deeply ingrained in and just very passionate about is around this concept of financial independence. So can you talk to me about sort of what you view as financial independence as well, for yourself and sort of what you're building the firm towards?
Yeah. So financial independence, this is something that I've been, I guess, interested in since I launched the firm, probably in college too, but I really dove into it more, probably 4 or 5 years ago, kind of planning out early financial independence, I guess I should say. And the fact that the earlier you can become financially independent, the earlier you are less beholden to outside forces pushing you to do things that you don't want to do. You have more flexibility to pursue passions. And that seems kind of, that's thrown around a lot, the word passions, but things that you are very good at or you really think will have an impact in the world, money is no longer a hindrance to pursuing those things. So that's something that my wife and I have both tried to strive towards. I need to throw her in here too, because she was working when I was launching the firm. She was making about $40,000 a year, and her investment in me and believing that I could actually build something that we could live off of. She now stays at home with our son and does my bookkeeping. That was priceless. So she's like the venture capitalist of my firm because she invested that.
It's a great way to look at it.
That time.
I love that.
The front end investors are rewarded a lot, and she is a front end investor in it. So we have tried to build towards this idea of being financially independent. And I've tried to build the firm in this way too. I want to get to a place where the firm is not the income that we depend on. So we've done some real estate investing, and we have a very high savings rate. Probably live on 30% of what we bring in. So we're really ramping things up. My original goal was to be financially independent by age 40. I think I'm really going to try to do it by age 35 now. There's a quote that I always misquote people. I never remember where I heard quotes, but basically the quote is, look at your 10-year goals and see if you can accomplish them in the next 6 months. And I try to do that every year at my annual planning retreat that I do, and kind of push things forward. So this financial independence thing has kind of been pushed forward more. I've been a little bit more aggressive with things, and the firm has grown more. So it's helped with that. And the real estate, I've really enjoyed getting into that. So I've really actually pared back the work days per week in my firm to allow for other side hustles, the millennial term that's used a whole bunch, to kind of expand a little bit. And I've really enjoyed that. That's one of the reasons that I enjoy keeping my firm as kind of a small solo practice. I can do really good work, but also be flexible to pursue other things that come up. When we're financially independent, quote, I will not stop working in my firm. I like my work way too much. I want it to be something that we're not dependent on. Anytime we're kind of dependent on me and my brain and my work, it just worries me a little bit, so that I try to move away from that. So if there's other streams of income that we can build to move us towards that place, I'm all about that.
So you said you're 32, 33, and you'll be financially independent by 35. So does financially independent to you mean like if you shut your firm down and you don't have any income coming in, like y'all would be fine?
Yes. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's really incredible. And I appreciate the way that you frame that financial independence doesn't mean death, right? Or retirement, if you will. It doesn't mean you're going to stop. It just means you don't have to do things that you may or may not want to be doing. So, in 5 or 10 years, you say, hey, like the financial planning firm, it's been great. I've helped a lot of people, but ultimately it's time to move on. You can do that without, trying to scramble and figure out, where the money's going to come from. But your firm's been growing for sure, but like it's, you're not making millions of dollars. So like, how have you been able to save enough in order to hit that level? Is it just that y'all have been able to keep your living expenses low enough that the nut that you need in the bank is just a reasonable amount? Or is there some secret I'm missing to how you've been able to accumulate wealth?
No, there's no secret. It's right where you nailed it. I mean, and we're not there yet. This is a stretch goal. So I'm 2 years out. I'm 33 and 35 is the goal. It will require probably 2 or 3 more real estate purchases for cash flow. Real estate has been part of it. We own a couple properties with a few doors that we earn income from and that we've been able to create value from and appreciate. Solo 401ks are a wonderful thing for socking away, saving a ton on taxes, and being able to ramp up savings really fast as soon as revenue gets up higher. And what you said too, keeping living expenses low, keeping everything from cell phone to cable to housing, food, entertainment, travel. We're big travel hackers. We basically spend zero money on travel whenever we travel. So all those things combined, it's kind of these little 1% better in a bunch of different areas. And it kind of comes together to paint that picture. And you also said the main thing is to provide us the flexibility. I plan to continue working in the firm. And one of my things that I really enjoy doing is giving. And my wife is super good at this, at identifying a need, whether it's an organization or a person. And being financially independent and having low expenses means that any additional income that I can make from the firm only puts us in a better spot to be able to give now and to build things that we can give even more in the future. Yeah, all that stuff gets me really excited when I try to talk about it.
That's awesome. Again, I commend you for putting in the effort today, because again, like that's going to give you the long-term ability to make a big impact. And, people that are frugal and, we'll say try to achieve financial independence at 34 aren't necessarily, or 35, I apologize, are not necessarily known for being, trying to give back. It's about like, oh, I'm going to get to this point so I never have to work again. And it's like, it's not the point, is that you're going to be able to have such a big impact because paying attention to it. And case in point, for anybody who's noticed every now and then there's just a little bit of edge on Kyle's microphone, it's because he's using a hotspot, because he's not spending money on internet at an office that he works 2 days a month at, which is fantastic. So for anybody, that's just part of it. But I think that's great. So one of the things you said was that you've peeled back some of the work days. So how many days are you actually spending working inside the financial planning firm at this point?
So my wife and I are trying an experiment just beginning this April, actually, 3 days a week. So I am working Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday doing some emails, basically while my son is napping. But other than that, we are spending more time as a family. My son's won only once, and I just don't want to miss out on it. I want to miss out on as little as possible as I can. I get up pretty early. I get up usually around 4:45 or 5 o'clock each morning, and I get started really early and kind of pull pretty long days, those 3 days. But I have found that just truncating that I have really become actually more productive. The old adage where work expands to, you probably know who said it, to fill the space that you give it, is definitely true for me. So when I can push it down to those 3 days, I'm able to get a lot more done in those 3 days than maybe I was able to get done in 4 or 5 days before, which has been kind of an interesting experiment to do. So that's the plan for the rest of 2018, is to sustainably work 3 days a week and also take some longer vacations in there too. In addition to that, I think the challenge is kind of exciting for me to see if I can do that. We'll see. I know the last week and this week, that's not going to happen with the taxes, and now I'm behind a little bit, but for the most part, I think that I should be able to do it.
So you're at 100 clients today. Are you done, or are you still going to be growing and bringing on new clients at this point? Sort of what's your top end in terms of households that you want to be working with?
Oh, I don't know, Alan. Can you answer that question for me?
Well, considering financial independence is looming, I feel like you could probably chill out on clients, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. So the last probably year and a half, I've been trying to figure out if I want to hire someone, if I want to expand, bring on another 25 clients. The need is out there, and I have the referrals, and I've actually kind of got involved in the financial independence community online a little bit, and been on podcasts and interviewed for other things. And so there's some referrals coming in. But basically what I've decided, and the Accelerate conference helped with this, we were talking about before we got on here, was an amazing conference about hiring, which was kind of neat because some of the people there were really jazzed up about, oh, this is amazing. We're getting really good information about how to hire, how to build a bigger firm. And as I was sitting through it, is amazing information for me too. And I was realizing that doesn't excite me at all. I don't want to hire anybody. I don't want to supervise anybody. I want to work with my clients, and I want to have the flexibility and I want the responsibility for my clients and not for other employees, at least at this point. So that's, I would say, maybe on a sabbatical from taking on clients, definitely for the rest of 2018. I have one caveat with that. I've kind of put a rule in place for myself of I will take on an exceptional client. And by exceptional, basically one that if you say yes to, I'd be willing to say no to 1,000 other clients to get this one client or to take care of this one client. And so this has just happened in the last week. Actually, I got a call from a elder law attorney, met not long ago, but a friend of his from college passed away at 37, and his wife is 37, and they have 2 young kids at home. And he had a pretty good life insurance policy for her. And he was wondering if I would be able to work with her. The husband was the one that handled all the finances, and she was kind of overwhelmed. And it turned out that a New York life agent found out about it and met with her and tried to sell her a $900,000 whole life policy. So that when there's a widow with 2 young kids and being sold something that's just not going to be right, that just pulls my heartstrings right out. So that's one. She hasn't become a client yet, but that would be one that I would be willing to take on just for the fact that I could keep her from being taken by someone else, I guess.
And they wonder why we're trying to get fiduciary laws passed.
Yes.
Unreal. Yeah. So, and it's kind of funny that you said that about Accelerate, because for folks that don't know, Accelerate was our retreat for some of our growing firms. You had to have $125,000 in revenue in order to attend. And so we had 15 come out to Bozeman back in late March just to come talk about, the issues that everyone's facing. And the big topic was hiring for sort of the theme of this retreat. I did not expect it to lead someone to confirm that they did not want to hire. However, it is a great realization to have because managing people is a whole different ballgame. I mean, it is a truly unique experience, skill set, something that you have to develop. And so making the decision to not do that before you do it, instead of hiring someone and then making the decision after that it was a mistake, is critical. So that may be one of the best takeaways of the event, was having someone say like, hey, you know what, this is awesome and it is not for me, or at least not right now, given, life stage and where things are at and the goals that you and your family have.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I think there's other advisors that I've talked to about the same thing. There's a lot of efficiencies that you can have if you're a solo practice. And actually you, Alan, and Michael Kitts has talked about at the conference too. A lot of times, if money is the motivator, it doesn't always make sense to build a big practice. There needs to be other motivation there, because the margins that you can get in a solo practice can provide the income that a practice or a firm, maybe 5 times the size, still doesn't provide for the original owner. By the time you factor in all the hiring and technology and reinvestment that you have to do, you have to get to another threshold before you kind of come back to that baseline where you're at. So yeah, it was a lot of really good material that just helped me solidify where I wanted to be. And I talked to other advisors there too, who are on the other end of the spectrum, ready to grow significantly. And it's just exciting to see everyone has their own path, and to see the clarity that came from that as far as providing people with an idea of where they actually want to be going and what that's going to entail.
That's so awesome. So you have grown pretty substantially. I mean, just in terms of number of clients, 100 households in 4 years. That's 2 a month on average, assuming you haven't lost any clients. And if you have, it's even higher. So where have the clients come from? You mentioned some of the financial independence, being involved in that community and on podcasts and things like that. But like, where have these clients been coming to you from?
Solely referrals. I've gotten a few off of my website, a few off the NAPFA website. I think one maybe found me through the CFP website, but 5 to 10 of all of my clients have come from, not from referrals, from current clients. And so I'm in an area that I grew up in, the school that I went to, the community that I went to. I was not a crazy kid growing up. I was a pretty good kid, trustworthy. And I think that has followed me. A lot of people know me, know my family, and just know, I guess, there's a trust there. And I would say that has definitely played into it. I noticed at about the 2.5-3 year mark, when people found out what I was doing, they were just waiting to find someone that they knew they could trust, that they had been able to vet, basically. So a lot of these people have seen me grow up and have vetted me as a person long before I was even thinking about being a financial planner. And I think that's played into it a lot. So that community presence has continued to compound as the referrals have gone. And then that's gone even a little bit into other states, as people have friends or family that are in other states. Also, just being present at community events, whether it's benefit auctions or golf tournaments, not even trying to advertise myself, but just being there and talking with people, and then them finding out what I do. And it often isn't even someone I talk to, it's someone else that they talk to that finds out, oh, Kyle's a financial planner. And then I get a call from someone that I know, but it was kind of a third step down the line that they found out about me. It's kind of a neat way that it happens over time. You kind of build the referral basis, and it just kind of keeps rolling.
You make a great point there that it's not about building a base of referrals. It's about just like being an involved citizen and being a good person. Young people that are getting into the industry ask me all the time, like, how do I get started? What are the next steps? And we generally focus on, get your CFP and do those sorts of things. But I do think, get involved in the community, not to get referrals, but just to get involved and to be able to have an impact on your local community. A single person's involvement can have such a dramatic impact. But don't act a fool. I mean, if you're the partier in college that's known for, getting wasted drunk all the time and, doing whatever college kids do these days, then people will remember you for that. Like, I remember the people that were like that. There's no way I would go to them to be my financial planner. It doesn't mean you have to be the most straight-laced person in the world, but just thinking about those things and thinking about the image that you set for yourself and how people perceive you, like those things do matter. And in the long run, they can really come back to benefit you.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. Some people are really gifted at making a really good and fast first impression. You come into a room, come to a conference, and you're just kind of the electric of the room, and you really draw people to you. And that's definitely not my gifting, but I'm more of kind of, I said earlier on, a turtle, just real slow over time and building relationships. But that compounding over time, we talk about all the time in our investments, but it's the same thing with our habits and our relationships too. Over time, you all of a sudden get to an exponential point where those benefits compound on each other and make a huge difference. So that's my wheelhouse, not the really good sales tactics or really good advertising or marketing. It's just not who I am. And I'm okay being a little bit slower, I guess would be the way to say it.
Well, yeah, I appreciate you say slower, but you're growing as fast as we hear advisory firms growing. So it certainly pays off. What do you think were some of the, if you have to narrow it down to just one or two really big, I guess, misses or screw ups that you had in your first couple of years, as well as sort of one or two things that you look back on and go, yeah, those were the big, decisions and the things that I did to succeed. Does anything come to mind when you think about the big wins and the big losses sort of from your first couple of years?
Probably a loss from the first couple of years. It's just not understanding the industry. I was young and I really didn't fully understand the difference between a hybrid firm, a broker dealer, an RIA, a wirehouse. All these things kind of melded together. I joined a firm where it was a hybrid firm and the broker dealer had their own RIA, and you use that for fee stuff and you use the broker dealer for commission stuff, and you just did it. And they pushed REITs, non-traded REITs. Some of those things I just didn't understand because I was young. I wish I could have somehow researched more or learned more of that earlier on to kind of figure out how that industry worked more. But then when I did, I guess this would be on the good side of it, I started realizing this broker dealer was taking such a cut of the business that I was doing that I could really launch on my own and do all the compliance stuff on my own and save a lot of money and charge clients less than what they were being charged by the broker dealer and still make more. And then jumping into that and launching, I actually met with another advisor who had launched had purchased a firm. And I was talking with him, I think I was 27. I would have been 27, 2012 when I was talking about launching the firm originally. And he said he wished he would have done it 30 years ago. And that was about all I needed to hear. And that's what made me take the jump, I guess. And that would be the thing that I wish I would have acted even sooner. But the fact that I acted, I'm really glad I did it then, because I'm now on the other side of that where something is built and it's providing a good income.
Yeah, it's one of those things that one of the more common responses to the final question, which I'm still going to ask you, so you're going to have to come up with another answer.
Oh, no.
But one of the most common answers is, that I wish I had started sooner. And if they went back in time, I think many of them are glad they didn't start sooner. So it is one of those things it's easy to, especially as entrepreneurs, that we always just want things to move faster. Like you said, setting 10-year goals and then trying to accomplish them in 6 months is just crazy. But that's what we do, because it's sort of that entrepreneurial mindset and that achiever in us, if you will, that, just want to accomplish and do more and do it faster. But, don't, for the folks that are listening, you'll know when you're ready. And there is a difference between not being ready and being fearful. Fear you can overcome, truly not being ready financially or education wise or whatnot. That's something you have to wait on. But fear is something that can be overcome. And I see that all the time with advisors that are just sort of I don't know if I can do it. And I've got 10 years of experience and a bunch of money saved and, a base of clients, but I still don't know if I can do it. I'm like, okay, yes. You'll be fine. So, and I hate to say it, but I do see it across gender lines where, again, I get these calls from 22-year-old dudes that are like, I'm going to start a firm. But a 32-year-old female will call me. And again, 10 years of experience with money saved and credentials and still lacks the confidence. And those are the ones I'm pushing, you have to start. And the 22-year-old dudes, I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Yes. Well, I always, trust the numbers. We're in the numbers business too. A lot of this, you can take away that fear, trust the numbers. See, if you have the savings, if you have the clients, I mean, definitely, if you're able to purchase some clients, some of those things you can remove your emotion from it a little bit if you can get some numbers down in a spreadsheet and see what it would look like and realize, I could actually make this work. And all it would take is this number of clients each year to make the jump. I could not advocate enough for going out on your own. It was the best professional decision I have made.
Why do you think that is? Like, is it just the freedom and flexibility and sort of your entrepreneurship mindset, or is there something else to it that you feel like it's the right decision?
For me, the big part is the freedom and flexibility. I like to change really fast. I always tell my wife, and this is kind of true in my whole life, about every 2 to 3 years, I kind of get an itch to try something new and change. And I'm about at that point right now, which is probably why I'm going to the 3 days per week to make sure I'm freeing up time for anything else. But the flexibility is just paramount for me. And I kind of try to teach it to my clients too when I'm talking to them, and try to get them to think outside the box of just the 9 to 5 job and see that there are other possibilities there. And it doesn't have to be self-employment. You can build financial independence or a flexible lifestyle in just about any arena. You just need to think creatively and realize that you're not actually going to get good input from the majority of those around you, especially if the status quo is a certain way. You're going to need to kind of think outside the box and try to adjust it to fit to you. But for me, like I said, I was kind of bred an entrepreneur, or to own my own business. Entrepreneur makes me sound like I'm a tech guy and just launching things and like the XY planning network or something. But I'm not. I just like running my own show, I guess. And that's probably a little bit of a selfish side of me too. But it really allows a lot of that freedom to do what's most important.
No, and that's, entrepreneur by definition is anyone who starts a business. I heard Chris Ducker say one time, don't call yourself an entrepreneur until you're profitable. And I really appreciated that, because again, like the word entrepreneur has been sort of watered down in our society, where anyone that, launches an app that makes no money can call themselves an entrepreneur. If you launch 3 failed apps, you're a serial entrepreneur. But, so it's like, no, when you actually make money, then you can call yourself an entrepreneur. Own opinion on that one.
I like that as well.
So as we're coming to a close, you have thrown out some just like awesome bits here at the end. So we'll see what else you can come up with here. So, the final question being, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give your younger self, that one thing you wish you had known then that you've learned, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
Oh, man, you're going to make me come up with something else. I think having better knowledge earlier on in the industry, just really pursuing it. Before I met with the first original firm owner, I had been doing some research, but I didn't do enough before he offered me the job. And I think that would have helped just to kind of get some input on the delineation between the different types of business models, to meet someone from NAPFA. Some of those things would have really helped the trajectory. And this is going to sound like a broken record with your other guests too, but I also wouldn't trade the experience that I got from having to figure that out, trying to wade through it. I know how those types of businesses operate now more than I would otherwise. And it's easy for me to explain that to a client who's in that environment, who's being sold things, and they don't understand that there are certain revenue sharing agreements. There are certain back office things that push products from companies, and doesn't mean that people working at those companies aren't good people. There's just conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed. And I guess I understand more of that and I'm able to articulate it more. So it's a silver lining in that. But starting earlier is always a good thing. That's why I write them letters to my son. It's the same thing. If I can get him to start a little bit earlier on things that I started later, he'll be doing great.
Yeah, it's a great point that it's one of the missing things that I find is I talk to so many people in the brokerage world that still don't know RIA. They still don't know, like I said, wirehouse and hybrid and OSJs and what all of these things mean. And just spend some time getting to understand it, because it will impact. The more fee only RIA may not be right for everybody. And so the more you know about it, the more you can make an informed decision. So, Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your path and wisdom. And congratulations on have a 1-year-old and upcoming financial independence. The firm is growing great. So I'm super excited for you. But yeah, best of luck with everything.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on. You guys do great work.
Support for today's episode comes from Ruby Receptionist. Let Ruby help you turn callers into customers. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN, or better yet, call them at 844-853-7829. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.